Hi, so in this video I want to talk about the topic of is it worth it to go to college. Now, um, okay, so so the things that I'm going to say in this video is it's from my perspective. So everyone is going to have different circumstances and different ways of approaching this question, so the answer for this is going to be different for everyone, and you have to kind of take that into account, that everyone is going to have their own circumstances and their own answer to this question. But I'm going to talk about this question from my perspective, at least the way I see it. um, so yeah, I think college, um, to me, I don't feel that great about college, because I feel that um, it, it, it is kind of a waste of time and money and efforts and energy and all the, and I also find it to be extremely inefficient at what it does. There are so many resources available now that uh, uh, whatever it is that a student wants to learn, you can learn it very easily on your own with books and libraries and actual actual interaction with that subject on whatever it is, whatever that subject is, and online resources. And it's just so much, there is so much, so many things and so many different ways out there that it really makes it kind of obsolete to go to college, unless it is for some kind of unless it is just that you want the degree, that's all. So in that way, yeah, it doesn't really make that much sense to me to spend so much time in such an inefficient um, and whatever work you really put into college, it doesn't really work towards something, though, does it? It's just about getting grades, and there's nothing else you're getting except for the grades. Now, the grades by themselves, they don't really have any real value, except for with that inefficient process, you might gain some, yeah, you might gain some knowledge about whatever subject that is, but to get, I think what it doesn't give you, the experience of college is, um, college education and tests and all that experience is, the problem is, there has to be more personal autonomy in the way a person approaches the subject. Because if a person, the student, is interested in the subject, there has to be, you don't just have to follow one simple way of doing it, like the way the textbook will suggest, and it will usually be a very, it'll be a dry way of approaching things, and kind of not that interesting, and wouldn't really, it doesn't really, when it comes to the final testing, which is kind of the point of, kind of the culmination of all those semesters, is to score on the test. It doesn't really test insight, it doesn't test understanding, it doesn't test creativity, it doesn't test innovative potential, and instead it's kind of based on just memorization. It's just dumb memorization. And I feel if the student is actually interested in learning whatever it is that they're learning, I think it requires a much more organic process than just, consuming and regurgitating in the form of, getting it from the textbook and writing it down in the test. It's too mundane. It's not engaging. It doesn't engage your creative facilities, and it's just, it takes up too much time. It doesn't, real learning is, it's an inspiring act. Inspiration, it just gets to you. It's not that inefficient. True inspiration is efficient. It immediately speaks to you, and in that way, it just doesn't work. Um, this formal way of learning of college, and plus there's just too much. There's just too much. I don't know. There are too many parts to the to the whole thing that it doesn't really make sense. It's just a simple thing. Take a subject and learn it. You don't need all this other fuss around it to be able to learn that subject. And with, I think, um, I think what can work really well is that a person have like-minded people who are also interested in that subject and to learn the subject together without really getting into the whole formal education type of um, inefficiencies. So I think, yeah, with all the resources that are available now, it can be done with so much less money to spend on college than it is. And I'm assuming that, okay, there are some colleges where, and some, yeah, where it doesn't cost you that much. In that case, that is kind of different. I mean, it's still some of the points that I'm talking about still hold about this, that um, it's not the most efficient way, nor is it the most engaging way to actually learn a subject. Um, but yeah, wait, what was I saying? Um, yeah, so with all these resources and with some like-minded people learning the same thing, the organic process of learning this, it can be much more efficient. It can be a lot more inspiring. Um, it will generate actual understanding and insight into the subject. It will spark an actual interest. Like so many times you see students when they're learning something in this formal education, college type of um, situation, and they just look bored out of their mind. Learning thing, learning things, learning something new, especially something that you're interested in, is not a boring experience. It's inspiring. It's it creates feelings of happiness. It's just learning something new is a beautiful experience. It's anything but boring. So if you see that a student is getting bored, that means something is really not working there. A student who is interested in learning a subject would never be bored of that subject unless there is no learning happening. In that case, if there is no actual learning, what is the point of this whole fuss? What's the point of making this whole institution and all this fuss that goes around it if there's no actual learning in there? So in that way, I feel a person who is a student who wants to, um, who is committed to learning something that he or she wants to learn, um, I think it can work with self-education. It can work in a much more efficient, in a way that would what would what would take you I guess 3 years, 3 to 4 to whatever years, you can learn it very quickly, and in a matter of months, I guess, in sometimes. Again, it's going to be different about whatever the subject is, and I too have personally found that when I learn a subject from a textbook and from a formal learning environment like college, versus when I learn something on my own inspiration and on my own autonomy, I find it much more engaging. I feel actually interested in the subject that I am learning, even if it's not the subject. It's not a subject that I actually would think that I would be that interested in. And even if it's that kind of a subject where I don't feel necessarily that interested, but if I'm doing it from a self-education type of perspective, it can, yeah, sometimes that can generate an interest too. So in that way, it kind of makes sense to have like-minded people around you. It's where the people can support each other and um, yeah, and enhance each other's learning. And it also helps to have some kind of a social support, right? Because if a person just learns on their own, if it's just one student learning something on his or her own, it can become kind of yeah, it, um, it would just be somewhat more engaging to have others around you, because it's that process. Learning is that process of discovery, and with, I guess the way it kind of works is when a few people are working together with their own self-interest, but also with each other, that process of discovery kind of gets enhanced in a way that you can actually share what you've learned, and you feel happy about, okay, that was something new that I learned right now. And yeah, and sharing that experience in um, it's a good experience. That's the kind of experience that is true in my, the way I feel is that that is true education. To learn something, to gain insight into it, to gain an actual understanding of it, to be able to learn something and think of what kind of implications it has, in a way that maybe now because you are an individual and you have your own perspective of it, maybe you will apply it in a way, but for it to be applied in a very individual way, a person has to have understanding of it. A person will need that insight into that subject, which will not come from memorizing it. So that is yeah, that is kind of the what I wanted to say here. And so, in my opinion, college. When people say that college is, it's a waste of time, waste of energy, waste of money, waste of resources, waste of efforts. I see it. I see why people say that, and I think there is much more. Um, there's a much easier way of doing it than to, go to college, and there's just too much going on in college. Make it less. Just make it easier. Learning isn't that complicated. Learn, and especially with all the resources that are available now, learning is really not that complicated as college makes it out to be. With all this, with all these formal procedures, there has to be able to actually learn something, you need that organic quality of one thing leading to another with various branching paths. A person needs to be able to make that choice. Okay, what path do I take next? Is there, there's this subject that I'm studying, there's another subject that I'm studying. Formal education might not see a connection between these two, but an individual with their individual perspective might be able to make a connection, might be able to make a new connection. And especially when they're working, not especially, but when they're working with a group, uh, this process of education can truly synergize in a way that the group together can, yeah, can have a lot of different perspectives, and that organic process will create true education. And yeah, so I kind of deviated from what the point, or what the topic of the video was, which is whether if college is worth it or not. So, but I feel that maybe some of these thoughts can kind of, I don't know, kind of somewhat talk about the subject or the topic of this video. Um, so yeah, uh, I think so. To say finally, if it doesn't, if it takes too much effort, if there's too much to put into college, I feel it's not worth it. I feel it is, but it has to be a person who doesn't, who chooses to avoid college, will need that drive, that inner drive for self-education in that way that it can work. It will work much more directly with the person because it is self-directed. Any When a person does something from their own drive, it's always going to beat these completely laid out pathways where there's no room for any movement. A person with their own inner drive will not necessarily follow this, because they will have their own perspective on it. So yeah, those are just a few thoughts. So what I meant to say is, if there's too much to lose with college, I don't think it's worth it. I think it is. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that it is, huh, that there's absolutely and utterly no value to it. Uh, but yeah, I don't feel that great about it. I don't feel it's necessarily the best way. But if there is some kind of a, if the student has chosen some kind of a field where it is important, it is the part of the bureaucracy to have a degree and to have that, or there's that kind of whole bureaucratic mumbo jumbo involved with it. In that case, it might be necessary to get to get a college degree. So in that case, think about it. Think about what you have to gain, what you have to lose, what you could do on your own, and what exactly is it that college is going to help you with that you cannot do on your own. I think that is a big question to ask, because oftentimes I've seen that there isn't really much, if anything. Sometimes there's nothing. So what really is the point of these professors giving you, oh, do this assignment, when you could specifically design an assignment for yourself that would work better for you. And yeah, but it is important, like I said, to have that self-directed drive, because that will help in taking that self-education all the way through. Because I think that is one of the, it's a really brute advantage that college has, is that a person is going to be forced to to take it all the way through and not lose interest somewhere along the way, because because you've spent so much time into it, you've put so much efforts and money and all this other stuff that you've put into it, that a person is kind of unlikely to quit. It's a very brute way of keeping you motivated, I guess. But no, that is, that is where a person will have to be motivated, and will need that drive, will need self that self direction, that um, holding yourself and not deviating. I think that's what is going to be necessary. And like I said, it's a really, really important and really beautiful part of learning, is to be able to share your learning with others, to not be alone in your learning, because that will also, I feel, will definitely help in keeping yourself on the path, because you will have other like-minded people around you, and you don't necessarily need college for this. You can find a lot of great people interested in learning things similar to you, maybe different to you. Maybe you might learn something from them, because in a classroom, when you're in a university, everyone is learning the exact same thing as you. Why not get a different perspective? Why not have a friend who is learning something quite different from you, that you never really thought about learning? Why not learn something about it? And this person and this maybe little bit of learning might give you a different perspective um, on your own topics that you study. So yeah, I think it's a great thing to have studying partners or studying friends who feel the same way as you about self-education and about learning. Yeah. So yeah, those are just a few thoughts. Again, I didn't exactly talk about the exact topic, nor did I really answer the question, is college worth it? But with all of these things, maybe this will kind of it kind of maybe it'll kind of approach the topic and kind of um, give you some idea about um, what could be the answer to this question for you. So yeah, so again, like I will say this again, um, analyze your own situation and circumstance very yeah, in detail, and understand, try to figure out what the answer to this is for you. Because if it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't make any sense to do something just for the sake of doing it, and to go to college just for the sake of college. um, it's something to consider if you want to do it or not. And again, to take your own, analyze your own things about how this is going to or might work out for you. And yeah, and huh, be what word yeah, and yeah, just be careful. Yeah, I guess, yeah, be careful with it. So mm, yeah, you don't want to end up losing, or losing in all that effort and all that years and all that money and um, all that stuff that goes into it, because there's just, it's a lot for a person's from a person's own pool, I guess, to put into this. Um, yeah, so yeah, those are just a few thoughts on this. If you have any of your own thoughts on this, um, on this question, even if it doesn't, even if it doesn't directly relate to the question, um, being that is it worth it to go to college? Yeah. So if you have any of your own thoughts on this, let me know. Ah, and yeah, that's where I'm going to end this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Oh, and good luck with all your learning experiences, and I wish you great luck with your future. So yeah, I just wanted to say that before I end this video. So yeah, um, I wish you a great future and make good decisions. Okay, so bye.